All right, and that was the hit single from the band Daily Solutions Podcast, playing their track, Noises Inside a Float Tank.
Right.
Can't tell because it's also just my voice, but that was the intro.
That was the intro.
And now it's the episode.
Yeah, this is real now.
I'm Graham.
I'm Ashkan.
And today's question is a two-word question, which is intercom system ?
Intercom system ? Okay.
So what do you think about that?
So, intercom system. It's a really tricky one.
And we have kind of our own float-on opinion on intercom systems. So we'll try to give a fair and balanced view of both sides of this.
And our opinion is that it's tricky. I mean, so there's... Here's the problem. Is that there is some part of you that's like, man, if something were to happen while somebody was in one of these float tanks...
It'd be really nice to have a color video camera up there, just watching them while they're floating, so we can tell what's going on.
You're putting people inside of a box, inside of a soundproof room.
Yep,
right?
With lots of water.
With lots of water, and in a strange environment, naked. There's all sorts of reasons why you're like, hey, if they were far in the backside of your float center and they're screaming or something, like you wouldn't really be able to hear them. And so having some sort of intercom where they could, in some sort of emergency, be able to communicate would be nice. There's a certain kind of like ease that it brings to know that a system like that exists. But then it kind of comes with this baggage, right? So I would say there's almost like two kind of categories of the baggage that comes with it. One is that I've heard sometimes some people have these intercoms installed that people start using them for very like petty reasons. Mm-hmm. Just like intercomming out, being like, hey, yeah, like what time is it? And it's like, like the whole idea, you're literally in an isolation tank, dude. Like maybe you should sort of like stay isolated. So, so like there's something nice about not providing people with that kind of easy escape. And the other thing is, it kind of goes back to this idea of these things being panic buttons, right? And
you're going there. I thought you were going a different place with your second point.
Okay, so there's three categories.
Yeah, three. Well, we'll get to the third one after that. Yeah,
get to the third one.
Yeah, go to the panic button one.
All right. So let's talk about panic buttons. So this actually goes back to like early days of REST research, right? So they, some of the earliest research, this is before they even had float tanks. They just like in a room, like a chamber rest is what they call it, a big dark room that have people in there for, long times, 24 hours at a time in a completely dark, quiet room. And Peter Sudfeld was talking about, as while he was at university, that they were doing these studies and they were putting these people into these environments, and in the room there'd be a big, panic button, and they would tell people at the beginning of their time in there that like, hey, if anything goes wrong, if you freak out, if you panic, if there's a button right here, you can push it, there's going to be someone monitoring it, they'll run in, they'll help you. It was kind of this big emergency pull cord, and people could only last a few hours in there. They were hitting the button, they were panicking. And Peter Sudfeld went and tried a different approach. So before people started this experiment, he would take them into the room and show them everything.
Yeah, before they wouldn't even do that. It was like, in order to keep this neutrality of experience, they wouldn't even show them the room. So you go in there blindfolded, everything's eliminated. All you do, they put your hand on the panic button, like, here's the panic button, but you've never seen anything. So it's really a bizarre experience.
So yeah, he would instead take them in, he'd show them everything in the light, he'd show them, what was in the room, all that sort of stuff. And he also just got rid of the panic button and basically changed the way that they were primed for the experience. Instead of this big focus on if something goes wrong, like we're totally ready to handle it. It was much more of a like, hey, everything's fine, this is going to be great. And he found that people would stay in there for much longer and, make it 24 hours and have much better positive experiences. And there's something to be said about that. The way that you influence people's perceptions as they go into what is an environment that has, very little else to color their thoughts after they get in there. Things like that can have a big impact. And, sending someone into a float tank and saying, here's an intercom in case anything goes wrong, or here's a panic button.
Right, don't call your intercom a panic button, I guess is the first lesson here.
Yeah, and like, I think if you do have one, you should put a lot of thought into how you present it, say like, here's an intercom if you need to communicate with us, or phrase it in a way that doesn't sound like it's there in case, in the very like normal 1 out of 10 case that someone has an issue in there and they need to get out like immediately. So that's definitely like one of the more like sensitive things I think that needs to be considered with that.
Right, it's kind of just like anything. Like if you have something in the basket of your room just for amenities, people are going to wonder if they should use that and how they should use that item that's in the basket, right? And
like if you have bear mace in there,
right? Oh, I wonder what the bear mace is for. Like, right, but it's the same thing with an alert button or a staff alert button or an intercom or a panic button, right? Like if you have that in there, there's some part of your brain very naturally that says, oh, well, when am I going to use this? Like what's the situation that I'm going to use this in? Then they start to think about situations where they might want to call out, and there's this whole, like Ashkan said, priming effect that might happen for that. So that's number 2.
Okay, so what's number 3?
I think it's just weird in this environment that you're going in there to get away from, in a lot of people's cases, technology and connection to the outside world, to have a technological connection to the outside world right there in the tank, right? Like that's what an intercom is you now have the ability to communicate with someone outside. And I personally, whenever I float in tanks that have intercoms, and I oftentimes know the center owners. I don't feel weird about it. I'm not like singing in the float tanks, but I still feel sometimes like maybe there's someone just listening to my float, and it's a hard thing to get rid of. Like all of a sudden this environment that I'm used to really truly feeling disconnected from everything except myself and the unit, I guess, around me, I actually don't feel that anymore. Like I feel like I can actually mentally take in that connection with the outside world, and it affects my experience on the inside. So that's what I was going to say for the third point.
No,
That
I've
makes me
definitely
feel
felt
a little
that.
weird about
yeah,
that.
strange, weird. It's a shockingly weird thing to try to like put out of your mind while you're in there.
So other things in the pro category for intercoms. Like I honestly see both sides, and at Float On we've sort of sided on not having intercoms, not having staff alert buttons on the inside for a lot of what we've said. Another pro, sometimes you legally have to.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Sometimes you're required to have them, and it'll often be your health department that will be the ones who are requiring that. And we've definitely seen that before. Oftentimes it's an intercom as opposed to just a button. They actually want that ability to verbally communicate both ways. So you'll see requirements for that. And there is something nice too. I mean, there really is. If someone is having something like a panic attack or something like that, and they need something, if their light is malfunctioning, or if you're in a tank that actually does have hydraulic lifts and it's not lifting up, or something's going wrong with the door mechanism, something like a button to communicate can be really useful.
Or we've had like a senior citizen who can get into the float tank fine, but after floating for that period of time, and having the gravity off their body, will not have the easiest time getting out of the float tank.
Yep. So there have been, I guess there have been situations where I totally understand what the benefit of having it in there is.
Yeah.
So again, this is a very tricky one to know exactly what to do and where to side on kind of emergency precautions versus your daily float experiences that you're throwing a lot of your regular floaters through.
Right. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
So keep sending us those tricky questions. Did you have anything else to say on that?
No, that's it. I mean, like nothing more than I don't feel very like concrete in a certain set opinion about it. Like I don't feel strongly one way or another because it just seems like there's big things to consider on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. All right, so if you have any other crazy questions that you want to send our way, go to floattanksolutions.com/podcast. Type them in there, dictate them by speech, and we'll answer them.
Yeah.
That's what this show's all about.
This is it.
We're here for you.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
All right, bye, everyone.